The stories we're following this evening: Islamic State militants release a video showing a Jordanian pilot being burned to death in a cage. Jordan responds by executing prisoners that were sought by the extremist group. North Korea says it will not engage in talks with the U.S. South Korea, meanwhile, says it will push for dialogue with the North regardless of the tensions between Pyongyang and Washington. And the defense ministers of South Korea and China meet for discussions on the security situation on the Korean peninsula. These stories and more just ahead. Hello and welcome, everyone. This is Early Edition at 6, brought to you live from Seoul. I'm Na-hyun Kyung.
And I'm Daniel Chua. Thank you for joining us.
Now we begin with a drastic response to Islamic State militant groups' recent actions.
Jordan is now reportedly, they have executed 2 prisoners, including the Iraqi female bomber who was demanded in a prisoner swap for the Jordanian pilot.
That's right. The brutal killings have strengthened the international community's resolve in the fight against what are being called acts of terrorism. Connie Kim starts us off.
Jordan has executed 2 prisoners in retaliation against Islamic State militants for the horrifically brutal death of pilot Muaz al-Qasasbeh.
At dawn this morning, the criminal Sajida al-Rashawi and the criminal Ziad al-Karbuli were executed after being convicted of terrorist acts.
The pair belong to terrorist organizations. The Iraqi woman, Sajida al-Rashawi, was demanded in a prisoner swap for the Jordanian pilot. All this comes after the Islamic State released an extremely graphic video on Tuesday, which purportedly shows the pilot being burned alive inside a cage. With the authenticity of the video confirmed, the international community has quickly condemned the killing and called for stronger efforts to combat terrorism.
Ideology they're operating off of, it's bankrupt. And this organization appears only interested in death and destruction.
The Secretary General urges all governments to strengthen their efforts to combat the scourge of terrorism and extremism within the bounds of their human rights obligations.
Over the past 10 days, ICE militants have publicly executed 6 people, including 2 Japanese hostages, strengthening the resolve of the international community against such brutality. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And now on to the latest on the crash of the TransAsia jet in Taipei.
Unfortunately, the latest number we have is at least 13 people killed in that crash landing that happened mid-morning local time there. The plane is believed to have been carrying a total of 53 passengers and 5 crew members. It reportedly clipped an overpass before crashing into a nearby river shortly after takeoff.
Well, rescue operations are ongoing as we speak. Some 30 people have miraculously survived the crash, while dozens were injured or are unaccounted for. The plane was flying to Kinmen from Taipei. The cause of the crash is not yet known. Korea's Defense Minister Han Min-gu met with his visiting Chinese counterpart Chang Wan-chan today. The two discussed a wide array of issues, chief among them being the security situation surrounding the Korean peninsula. For this report, here's Arirang News' Kim Hyun-bin.
Chinese Defense Minister Chang Wan-chan held talks in Seoul on Wednesday with his South Korean counterpart Han Min-gu. South Korea's defense ministry said that military and nuclear threats from Pyongyang and the current security situation on the peninsula were at the forefront of their discussions. The 2 countries agreed to expand bilateral cooperation on North Korea and a range of other issues. Minister Han says South Korea will promptly counteract any provocations from the North, and he urged his Chinese counterpart to put more pressure on Pyongyang to end its nuclear program. The 2 ministers also discussed the establishment of a direct military hotline with one another, and they agreed to hold working-level talks on the matter in the near future. The 2 countries have had hotlines between their navies and air forces since 2008, and they have had discussions on setting one up for their defense ministers since 2007, but put it off as China was hesitant to risk its relations with North Korea. The communication channel is widely expected to enhance security on the Korean peninsula and cooperation on North Korean threats, as the ministers will have direct access to each other. The two sides also talked about ways to enhance cooperation in peacekeeping operations, as well as cyber warfare. Chang is the third Chinese defense minister to visit South Korea. The last visit of a Chinese defense minister to Seoul was in 2006. Chang is scheduled to return to Beijing on Thursday. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
North Korea, in the meantime, says there is no longer a need for the regime to hold talks with the United States. The latest statement out of Pyongyang comes a matter of days after its invitation to a top U.S. diplomat was rejected by Washington. Hwang Sung-hee has the details.
North Korea has officially stated that it no longer intends to engage with the United States. In a statement released Wednesday, the National Defense Commission said the North Koreans are not willing to sit at the negotiating table with Washington when the latter seeks to bring it down. The commission, which is the regime's most powerful ruling body, is referring to a remark made by U.S. President Barack Obama in a recent YouTube interview.
And it is very hard to sustain that kind of brutal authoritarian regime in this modern world. Over time, you will see a regime like this collapse.
The commission went on to warn that the U.S. hostilities will be met with a just counteraction focused on inflicting the bitterest disasters upon the United States. North Korea may find itself cornered after the U.S. turned down a number of its offers. Pyongyang said last month that it was willing to suspend nuclear testing if joint military drills between the U.S. and South Korea were halted, an offer flatly rejected by Washington. North Korea invited Chief U.S. Envoy for North Korea Policy Sang Kim to Pyongyang last week, only to be turned down again. While the regime blames Washington for the current deadlock in dialogue, the U.S. has continuously insisted it remains open to talks. It says the only condition for resuming dialogue is for the North to demonstrate a willingness to give up its nuclear ambitions. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
And South Korea says inter-Korean dialogue and the ongoing friction between the U.S. and North Korea will be dealt with as two separate issues. Unification Ministry spokesperson Im Byung-chul said during a press briefing today that Seoul will push for dialogue with Pyongyang regardless of the regime's heightening tensions with Washington. Im added that South Korea maintains its basic stance of building trust with the North through dialogue and cooperation. Now, Seoul made an offer for dialogue in late December, but has yet to get a response from Pyongyang.
And North Korea is demanding that the United Nations retract its resolution on the country's human rights record. Pyongyang state-run Korean Central News Agency says North Korean Foreign Minister Lee Soo-young sent a letter to the UN asking it to revoke the adopted resolution, saying it's based on false information. North Korea has been demanding that its human rights record be expunged since last month when North Korean defector Shin Dong-hyuk admitted that he had falsified parts of his story about his experiences in a prison camp. Lee has reportedly said Pyongyang is willing to talk about its human rights record when the UN withdraws its resolution. Constitutional reform has been mentioned here and there for a while now. Unfortunately, lawmakers here in Korea have not been able to initiate any real discussion due to political differences. But today, the opposition camp says it has set its own deadline to work towards bringing about reform. For more on this story, we have our Lee Ji-yoon.
Let the public decide whether or not Korea needs an amended constitution. That's what the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy's floor leader Woo Young-gun plans to do next year.
Let's form a special committee at the National Assembly this month to start rewriting the Constitution. Whether it be a semi-presidential system or a parliamentary cabinet system, let's discuss all options. Then we should hold a national referendum on the amended Constitution during next year's April general elections.
The opposition camp has been criticizing the president for exerting, quote, emperor-like power under the Constitution. It wants to revise the law to limit the president's power over nominating members of the cabinet and the Constitutional Court. The party is also pushing for a system in which the prime minister would take the administrative power, and such power would be guaranteed by the legal system, not by the president. However, the opposition camp's efforts to move forward with the issue faces a tough road ahead. For one, President Park Geun-hye refuses to discuss the issue. She says doing so would only shift the public's attention away from her economic initiatives, which she believes is a priority for the nation right now. The ruling party's new floor leader, Yoo Seung-min, also said Wednesday that they would need more time to discuss the issue because of contradicting views within the party. The current constitution was last revised in 1987 with the end of the country's military rule. Lee Ji-yoon, Arirang News.
Business partners face a one-day entry ban. 77.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Na Hyung-kyung and Daniel Che.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
On Early Edition at 6.
Korea's finance minister Choi Kyung-hwan says a tax hike is what the government will use as a last resort for broader welfare. That comment was made while he was speaking to lawmakers on the Strategy and Finance Committee on Wednesday. He said taxes will be raised only with public consensus when the country's tax revenue falls short, and added that that will be after the government digs up the underground economy and cuts unnecessary expenditures. Choi went on to say that the country's ruling and opposition parties should first agree on the scope of the social welfare to decide how to finance the necessary welfare programs. An ongoing theme pushed by the Park Geun-hye administration is building a creative economy. President Park took another step toward realizing that vision today with the launch of a new innovation center that will soon be a hub for the bio and cosmetics industries. Song Ji-sun has this report.
A practical support center and regional hub that helps startups turn their creative ideas into businesses. That's the idea behind a group of innovation centers that are key to President Park Geun-hye's envisioned creative economy. On Wednesday, President Park opened a new center in Chungcheongbuk-do province that will specialize in bioindustry, cosmetics, and renewable energy. A total of $1.5 billion will be invested in the Center for Research and Development in Bioindustry, Medical, and Renewable Energy Technologies over the next 3 years. Part of the idea behind these centers involves large conglomerates providing smaller firms with know-how and resources. At the Chungcheongbuk-do Center, LG will play that role with its healthcare arm sharing over 27,000 patents with smaller companies seeking to start businesses. The central province is known for producing 1/5 of the country's cosmetics. President Park pointed to China as an important target market for Korean cosmetics, as China is the world's second largest cosmetics market after the U.S., growing at an average of 10% each year. She also called on women in the region to participate in making a Korean wave of cosmetics overseas. The government will complete the launch of 17 creative economy innovation centers nationwide this year, all customized to foster designated industries in each region. Startups will be provided with R&D and financing support to help ease the difficulties that many smaller companies face when launching a business. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now, when Chinese tourists come to Korea, one of the very first things they do is to snap up some Korean-made cosmetics products. And this is helping one local cosmetics group tremendously as its popularity doesn't stop in China. Kim Ji-yeon has this story.
Chinese tourists are vacationing in Korea in ever larger numbers, and they're not going home empty-handed. Cosmetic products are some of the popular items bought by the 6 million Chinese tourists that visited the country last year. The main beneficiaries of all this are Korean cosmetic brands, with some experiencing two-digit growth. In fact, Korean cosmetic giant Amorepacific Group, which owns brands like Seorasu and Innisfree, recorded its best earnings last year. The firm's sales sales and operating profit jumped 25% and 52% to more than $3.5 billion and $517 million last year, respectively. And it's not just the tourists behind the company's growth. The company's business operations in China have also borne fruit. Amorepacific sales in China increased 44% last year from the previous year. And to cater to the rising demand there, the firm plans to launch its skincare brand Iope in the Chinese market this year. Meanwhile, its low-end brand Innisfree is expanding into other Asian countries such as Singapore, Malaysia, and Taiwan, as well as the United States. Striking the iron while it's hot, Amorepacific expects a sales increase of 13% this year to more than $4 billion, in addition to a 15% increase in operating profits this year from the previous year to $612 million. And Amorepacific's target stock price has been raised by 10% on Wednesday to nearly $3,000 by High Investment and Securities and Dongbu Securities. Amorepacific was founded in 1954 and is currently led by CEO Seok Young-bae. Last year, it merged with one of the country's largest distribution companies, CJ/GLS. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
If any gearhead charges up to you and asks this question, what was the best-selling compact hatchback car in Korea last year? Here's the answer. It's Volkswagen's Golf. Industry insiders say this is significant because it's the first time sales of an imported car outpaced those of a domestic one in a particular model group. Local auto industry sources say Volkswagen sold nearly 7,240 units of the Golf last year. That's up 24% from a year earlier, outstripping its main rival, the Hyundai i30, which posted record low sales of fewer than 6,700 units. Market watchers believe the latest trend is an indication of the growing popularity and availability of imported cars in Korea in recent years. The controversial online taxi booking service Uber has asked the Korean government to set up a new registration system for local Uber drivers. Uber's Senior Vice President of Policy and Strategy, David Plouffe, told reporters in Seoul on Wednesday that the U.S.-based taxi startup wants to operate legally in Korea. According to him, the new registration system would allow the drivers to become licensed if they meet certain requirements, including experience and background checks. A Seoul municipal official said, however, Uber has not yet made a formal request for setting up such a system to the city. The Korean branch of Uber launched back in 2013, but local taxi drivers have been strongly against it, and the government has called the unregistered taxi booking service illegal. After months and months of falling and dipping to new lows, global oil prices have finally rebounded significantly this week, jumping nearly 20% in the space of just 4 days. But is this a sustainable turnaround or merely a blip before prices head south again? Our Hwang Ji-hye reports.
Global crude prices have risen every day for the last 4 days, with prices gaining 19% over the period. That's the biggest advance since January 2009. U.S. benchmark West Texas Intermediate crude oil prices hiked 7% on Tuesday to $53 a barrel, while Brent oil finished up almost 6% at around $58 a barrel. The price gain came as the U.S. dollar tumbled around 1% against a basket of currencies on the same day, bolstering the value of dollar-denominated commodities. The drop was the biggest daily decline since October 2013. The surge in oil prices also came on the back of major energy companies announcing plans to streamline operations as a means to stem plummeting oil prices. BP made the latest move on Tuesday, saying it will slash spending on assets and investments by as much as $6 billion this year. So, is the oil sell-off over? CMC Markets' Michael Houston is skeptical, saying BP and other energy companies might have to prepare for prices to drop again.
It's going to have to keep a lid on costs. It's going to have to be very forensic in terms of future capital expenditure, and it's going to have to get used to essentially a much lower average oil price over the next 18 months to 2 years.
Industry group American Petroleum Institute also says that U.S. crude oil inventories rose more than 6 million barrels last week, fueling concerns about an oversupply. Traders also cite temporary factors like strikes at U.S. refineries that affected the four-day oil price rally. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Well, moving on to some tech news, it probably won't be long before everything in our homes are connected. It's no wonder an increasing number of IT companies are dying to get you hooked up first.
Right, most are entering the smart home industry through purchases of related startup companies. And our Shin Se-min tells us about another company that recently entered the race.
Intel Corporation, the world's largest semiconductor chip maker, has joined the competition for leadership of the fast-growing smart home market with its recent purchase of Lantique, a company that specializes in broadband access and home networking technologies. With the $280 million purchase, Intel is trying to strengthen its connected home and Internet of Things businesses, and it's not alone. It joins global IT companies like Samsung Electronics, Google, and Apple, which are already racing to get a piece of the action. The smart home market is worth over $48 billion as of last year and is expected to reach over $111 billion by the year 2019, with an annual average growth rate of nearly 20%. Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics closed deals in August for smart home device maker SmartThings and QuietSide LLC, a home automation startup, and the air conditioner distribution company based in the U.S. Apple CEO Tim Cook said last year that the company had invested in 24 startups related to the smart home business in the past couple years. Google, the world's largest search engine, is also in the game. It bought a few startup companies that specialize in home automation to get a leg up on the fast-moving market. With other European IT companies rushing to enter the promising industry as well, it's only a matter of time before more devices inside the home are connected to each other. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now the weather, apparently we had the first day of spring today.
Well, apparently we call this day Ipchun according to the 24 seasonal divisions here in Korea. For more details on the day and the weather, let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Good evening, you guys. As you mentioned, today is Ipchun in Korea, which is the first seasonal term according to the lunisolar calendar. And today, the weather played a big part in that with mild temperatures and mostly clear skies. And believe it or not, according to the ancient myths, if the day is bright and sunny, you'll have a good and rich year. So I guess we can look forward to a nice year. However, we have high levels of fine dust and it looks like they will stick around, and currently Seoul isn't looking too bad, but for most parts of the nation there are higher levels, especially over in Jeollabuk-do province and on Jeju Island, so keep checking the readings if you have any plans to go outside today. Now tomorrow is going to be a nice day with clear skies and mild readings ranging between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. Now, except on the East Coast regions where sporadic rain or snow is expected to fall in the early morning hours. Now, with that in mind, let's check over to our readings for tomorrow. So we'll start off the Thursday morning at -4 and gets up high to 5 in the afternoon, while Daegu and Busan will top out to 6 and 8 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops to 5, Dokdo hits 2, while Nangkeugang dips low to -6 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
Well, thank you for that, Michelle. That does it for us. To have a great start to your day or a safe drive home. I'm Daniel Chen. I'm going to stay warm, although the lunisolar calendar suggests otherwise.
Okay. Well, I'm Nai Hyung-kyung from us and the rest of the team in Seoul. Thanks for watching. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.